So today we have a talk by Emanuela Borgnino. I hope I said that more or less right. She's a senior assistant professor of environmental anthropology at the University of Torino. And she has been at OIST before for a year, and she's back now for a couple of months. And she's working with Tim Ravasi and his unit. Her work sits at the intersection of anthropology, environmental, and conservation sciences in the Northern Pacific region. But she has also been conducting extensive research on the topic of ecological responsibility in the Hawaiian archipelago. Currently, her research is focusing on history, culture, and ecology on Okinawa and Hawaii, hoping to improve the understanding of biocultural dynamics. Today, her talk is on Indigenous Ecologies, and I'm very much looking forward to hear more.
Thank you very much. Thank you everyone for being here today. Thank you to the OIST and the TSVP program for inviting me, and of course to the Marine Climate Change Unit and Professor Ravasi for bringing me here today. I'm really happy, and probably you can see that I'm also a little bit nervous to be here with you today. As an environmental anthropologist, I'm not really used to this particular setting. I'm used to listening to stories about the environment on beaches, under a tree, on boats, on gatherings, not usually on high-tech institute like the OIST. So please bear with me if I seem a little out of my habitat. But it is actually precisely the encounter of different worlds, traditional, indigenous, scientific, that I like to explore with you today. And through the lens, of course, of environmental anthropology. So first of all, let's make sure you understand what we're talking about today. We're talking about anthropology. Do you all know what anthropologists do? Some of you do, some of you don't. Pretty sure some of you are thinking something like this. You're not alone. Normally when I meet people, most of the people think that I'm a forensic anthropologist, so that I work with bones. Nope. Other people think that I'm an archaeologist. I wish, but I'm not. Taxpayers are sure that I waste their money on my researches, probably. My husband thinks that I make flower arrangement with Hawaiian women. I like to think that I'm doing something good for the environment, but actually what I do most of my time is writing paper, proposals, looking for funding for grants. So to answer seriously the question, what does environmental anthropology does is environmental anthropology takes seriously what people and culture have to say about their environment. Their islandscapes, their desertscapes, their mountainscapes, wherever they are. So environmental anthropologists take seriously the way cultures see the world, the way in which human give sense to the environmental life that surrounds them. So what I do, particular as an environmental anthropologist, I study the cultural relationship between islanders and the sea. And from now on, when I talk about cultural relationship, I refer to them as biocultural relationship. As biocultural relationship. And I studied them from the Mediterranean to the Pacific. You'll see here some pictures of the co-author of my research, which are not participants, they're co-authors of the research. So it's from, that's the Valley of Makua on the island of Oahu, we're in Avahi. This is the island of Azinara, which is we're in the Mediterranean on the north part of the Sardinia Island. And this is, of course, Okinawa, the island that hosts us. So what I do is I try to understand how islanders relate with their environment, in particular the marine and coastal area. So I study biocultural relationship, or biocultural relation as you prefer. And now that I think, or I hope that I have explained what environmental anthropology does, let's see why I do it. I'm pretty sure, and I don't know your backgrounds, but I'm pretty sure that you agree with the fact that water holds information. It could be minerals, it could be currents, it could be eDNA. So just as water holds so many information for you as a scientist, well, also people and places hold a way of knowing that are very inclusive of culturally immanent practices that are rarely incorporated in conservation projects. So engaging with people and coastal area may reveal, and usually reveals, culturally dimension that are very concrete, very real, very material to islanders or social scientists, but that they may linger in the realm of the unseen, unperceived, untangible for marine scientists. And this is, of course, has to do with, well, the separation of between the natural science and humanities, which is, as you can imagine, highly problematic. So, because many scientific challenges that we all faces, the planet will face or is facing right now, have profound social and cultural impact. Sadly enough, only 5% of all the literature on marine science is social marine science. So it's very tiny. It's only 5%. So what I'm arguing today at this wonderful institution is that we need to pay more attention to the different culturally grounded ocean-based relationship that culture, individuals, group have with the ocean. Well, you know that United Nations estimates that 700 million people live in coastal area, and all the action taken toward the conservation and protection of all these marine and pristine coastal area, I think would really benefit from taking into consideration the human dimension or the human account. 50% of coastal regions across the globe are under pressure of heavy anthropogenetic impact. Could be like changing climate, harvesting, not in the near future, but right now. However, not many knows, and I don't know, I would like to ask if you knew this information, that a lot of people are unaware that biodiversity hotspots, most of them actually, are located where native culture have worked for hundreds of years to maintain a relationship of exploitation, but also codependence with natural resources. And I talk about exploitation. Of course, indigenous people exploit nature. It's not, they don't live in harmony. That's a trope. That's a narrative. They do what they do. They try to understand how the environment works. So 80% of Earth biodiversity is found precisely in the territory inhabited by indigenous people, who, by the way, makes for 6% of the total world population. So 6% of the population, it's somehow managing or helping all of us protect 80% of the world biodiversity. There must be doing something good. All right, the one that did something wrong are the ones that are extinct now. Talking about indigenous population, there are tons of indigenous population that don't exist anymore. They make the wrong decision for their environment. But the ones that made the good decision are the ones that are doing something good. So I want to understand what they're doing good. Many and I'm not the only one, of course, many environmental anthropologists have studied culture from Japan to South America, from Oceania to the Caribbean. And what they did is that they proved that our concept of environment, it's not universal and it's not neutral, but historically, culturally, somehow decline. Just as our concept of living, it's not universal. There are societies with which I work, like in the Pacific, where living and not living dichotomy does not really exist. Pebbles, stones are alive. However, if we stop thinking about, we stop a second and we think to our scientific culture, don't we also talk about the life of the stars? Correct me if I'm wrong, you are the expert. Do we talk about the life of the stars? What about the half-life of Celsius? Do particles decay? Tell me if I'm wrong. Maybe you have more examples, right? So what I'm saying is that, are those metaphors? You can say, oh yes, particles decay, or the life of the star is a metaphor, is a social metaphor that we use to understand better what we're talking about. Are you really sure about that? Or are we recognizing life to those things that we also categorize in the category of not living? I don't know, it's a question for you. Think about it and then let me know. But Pacific Islanders and Pacific culture take this a little bit farther. In Pacific culture, there is not even a term for nature. So I cannot translate in Hawaiian, in Tongan, in Samoan, or in Uchinaguchi, the language of this island, the native language of this land, the word nature. There's not a word for nature. What does that mean? That they don't recognize nature? Of course not. It means that those societies have elaborated a very elegant relationship with nature that does not follow the same cultural and historical step that brought us to have a dichotomy between culture and nature, human outside nature. And I think that this tells us something. And on this, those are the bases. This is like a 101 environmental anthropology lesson for you. And those are the bases for my researches. Because what I want to do and what I'm trying to do is to try to reframe the idea of marine conservation around this plurality of nature-coupled dynamics system, focusing on the production of knowledge of islanders. And why I'm talking about the plurality, because each island, each culture have a way of knowing the environment that is different from the other. They have similarities, of course, indigenous ecologies, plural. There are some similarity that we will see in a short while. So you should know now who I am, why I do what I do, but you don't know how I do it. So in order to explain to you what I do I thought about sharing research that I did in Hawaii for 2 years. What I do is that I collect and interpret biocultural data. I interpret, guilty, okay? I do that. So the research then I would like to share with you is the one that took place on the island of Oahu. We are in the Hawaiian archipelago, where Honolulu is, you probably all know it. And the aim of the research was to try to investigate the ecological responsibility, which has a word in Hawaiian, kuleana. Can you try to say kuleana?
Kuleana.
No, that's not good. Kuleana. That there's someone who did. Are you Hawaiian? There is like a female voice that said it perfectly. So try to understand how ecological responsibility is shaped, is formed, is it practiced, and in two specific organized group of native and not native Hawaiian in two particular bays. So what kind of relationship, what kind of ecological responsibility they feel, they have, they perform toward those two bays. And of course, the methodology that was used was, first of all, basic research, basic ethnographic research. We use participant observation. What is participant observation? It's investing your time, your money, your efforts in spending a lot of time with the people that you work with, listening to them, participating to their activities, any activities that they do, learning the language. Then semi-structured interview, which in another way, it's a fancy way to say chit-chatting, talking stories, and literature review. And then we add to that biocultural collection. So what is biocultural collection? We try to document human and ocean or coastal interaction, and we make a list of plants, animal, that is aimed to evaluate the biocultural significance of specific taxa. We have taxa that are called cultural important taxa that are the one that we focus most of our attention, but not all of them. And we make an inventory of key components of the environment. And then we add to that local ontology, which is tangible, intangible cultural heritage, and ecological based oral narratives. This is an expression used by an environmental anthropologist from the Pacific, from Tonga, Epeli Awofa, which for us is an important name. Normally we bow when we say that name, because he's very important. And ecological based oral narratives are place-based memories of people. Practices of responsibility that we can document, and cultural mapping. So we map names, toponym that has to do with resources of the environment. And we do it, and you can do that everywhere actually in the world. I did that in the Asinara Island in Italy. So you don't need an indigenous population. You need a local islander population that lived there for a long period of time to do that. And this is the methodology that we use. And all the idea, and we did that to try to understand this idea of ecological responsibility. Do you remember the word? Kuleana. Kuleana, thank you very much. Kuleana. So this is an indigenous scholar, Jamaica Osorio from the University of Hawaii at Manoa. And she states that at the root of all relationship in Hawaiian sense is the idea of kuleana. So kuleana, in native contemporary Hawaiian culture, there is this word that can be translated as environmental anthropology, but ecological responsibility, but also right, duty, obligation, privilege. There are so many layers of meaning in the word kuleana. So what we did, we tried with like focus group like this one to understand what kuleana really means to the people that perform this practice, this ecological responsibility. So to them, to have kuleana, or in English is to stand, in Hawaiian English, to stand in your kuleana means, first of all, having a relationship of continuity, all of long duration with something, being nourished and nourish one another, and having direct and personal experience of it. And people claim to have responsibility toward a bay, toward a particular marine species, toward a plant, toward sometimes an ecosystem. Like I have kuleana for the reef, for example. Some people told me that. But if you look at this description of kuleana, do you think that you have kuleana for something? Do you think you have kuleana for the topic of your research? I don't know the topic of your research. It could be particles. It could be insect. It could be manta ray, because I know someone, a friend face in the audience. But do you think you have a long-standing relationship with the topic of your research? Do you think you're nourished by this topic? By nourish means symbolically, means materially, so food, but also monetary, nourished. And do you think you have a direct experience of it? Could we say that you have kuleana for what you're studying? I know some people studied coral for 20 years, or a particular molecule, and so on. So just think about it. This is just a focus group that we did in order to understand the layer of meaning of this word. So K for kupuna. Kupuna means both ancestors and elders in Hawaiian language. And then U, well, sustainability, L, language, because the Hawaiian language has a lot of layer of meaning. Keiki is children, so the idea of the next generation. Aloha Haina is the relationship with the land and the ocean. Ohana is the extended family, and Malama Aina is the stewardship, the land and the sea. So why is so important the word kuleana? It's because kuleana is based on 3 pillars of indigenous ecologies that we can find anywhere where there are indigenous ecology in the world. talking about, it doesn't matter if we talk about desert people, mountain people, islands people, and so on. And the three elements of indigenous ecologies are dwelling pluralism, genealogical connection, and sensibility. That's something that we always need to bear in mind when we do research, in particular about the ocean, because that's what I'm interested in. So dwelling pluralism, let's start from the first one. Let's tackle all of them. In dwelling pluralism, each ecological element of an island maintain and express interdependence and reciprocal relationship. And this applies to all, human and other than human, not human, call it as you like, animal, plants, mineral, atmospheric, hydrological, and terrestrial agents, spirits. Dwelling pluralism emphasized the importance of respecting and learning from diverse ecological knowledge production. So the idea that turtles produce knowledge and you can learn from it. So the dwelling pluralism is this idea. This is Katerina Teaiwa. It's a Kiribati scholar from Kiribati, so Pacific, and she wrote that land and water like language contains layers of spiritual, biological, chemical, geological significance and agency. So land and water have information. And I think you can agree at least with the biological and chemical one and geological, right? Can you pass me those three at least? What do you think? Yes? Do you agree with that? All right. I know you have an issue with the spiritual one, but I'm here to try to push our encounter a little bit farther and try to make you understand why we're talking about that. So this is dwelling pluralism, the idea that other living elements of the environment produce knowledge. And then the interconnection of that knowledge can produce a new form of knowledge. Then there is genealogical connection. Well, I thought about citing the first ever book on Hawaiian ecology published in 1972 by two American scholars and one indigenous native Hawaiian. And then why do I cite these few sentences? Because I think that these few sentences in particular explain the key concept of the relationship with the natural world for the native Hawaiian culture. First of all, is a subjective relationship with the visible and invisible reality that surrounds us, which recognize natural expression as person and not object, and a relationship of dependence made up of obligation and responsibility. Obligation and responsibility. What is that in Hawaiian? Yes, kuleana, of course. So humans, how can I say? This vision, I think it's particular. I think it's very important. In Pacific, plants, stones, coral polyps, wind, sharks, and people are in kinship. Again, it's not a metaphor. When you read Darwin and the Tree of Life, the idea that all life has a common ancestor, is that a metaphor? No, right? So this is the same. Having kinship with the environment is not a metaphor for indigenous ecologies. And fun fact is that in the Kumulipo, which is the creation chant in Hawaiian culture, coral polyp, they're called koa, emerge as one of the earliest form of life from primordial darkness. Primordial darkness is at the bottom of the sea. It's called po, and life comes from po. Are you familiar with that, right? It sounds something that you already heard. So this vision translates into a native ecological approach that doesn't really recognize equality between species. Indigenous ecologies are not democratic at all. There is a hierarchy, and everyone has a status, everyone has a place in this ecology. Humans are perceived as interconnected with a network of relationship in the environment, of which they share the same genealogy. If you don't like genealogy because it's biased for you, switch it with matter. Humans share the same matter with the environment. If you don't like that, switch it with subatomic particles. Humans and the environment share the same subatomic particles. So humans are perceived as interconnected in a network of relationship with nature, of which they share the same matter, but toward which they have instinct responsibility. Yes, Kuleana. This is interconnectiveness, right? So the coral is literally the ancestor of Hawaiian life, foundationally, both biologically and spiritually, for example. And last but not least, sensibility, which is the hardest to grasp. If genealogical connection was something that you didn't really appreciate it, well, you're not gonna like sensibility. Because sensibility is, in this culture, the elements of the environment act and react in relationship to human beings as they are capable of sensibility, the ability to feel and perceive. And you can tell me, oh, yes, we know. That's our experiment. That's what we would do. We study, we interact with something, and we study their reaction. There's nothing new for me. Well, sensibility, it's acknowledging that those elements of the environment can communicate with you, and you can communicate with them. And this is another scholars from the Pacific. And as you can see, it says that sensibility is the capacity to receive and perceive stimuli from oceanscapes, landscapes, and heavenscapes, and to respond to these sensory stimuli in ways that contribute to our overall understanding of our world. To contribute to our overall understanding of the world is a form of epistemology, a way to understanding the world, to experiencing the world that's around you. So I think that this, I know it's not easy to understand. So I thought, let's try to give another example to understand. In the Hawaiian language, there are two verbs. One is nana, which is to see, and the other one is nai. The Hawaiian language has 13 letters with the vowels, 5 vowels, 6 vowels, and the other letters. So every word sounds the same. It's normal. And it's challenging. So nana is to observe. Nanai, this one is called Okina. It's a letter, this one. Nanai, it's to observe, but not only observe, it's feeling, perceiving, intuiting through all your senses. And this distinction shows two ways of relating to the world, especially in terms of connection with the environment and other species. To observe involves all your senses. So sight, smell, touch, hearing, and also feelings. And it comes from a long-term relationship with a place or a subject. And it's how we interact, not with people or with animals or with plants only, but also with things like water, air, current, particles. It has to do with everything. So indigenous ecology is not simply, can we say, an alternative, a different perceptual approach to environment, but it's a different understanding of the world and the relationship between living and not living, and other than living things, let's call it like that. It's a different way to produce knowledge about the environment. With sensibility as a pillar of your ecological stance, indigenous population can say that they collaborate with nature, that nature is a partner. It's not something that they manage. It's not something that they protect. It's not something that they conserve. It's something that they partner with. It's a partner in their work for thriving, for living. So maybe this is one of the reasons why the 80% of biodiversity is found on indigenous land. Could be, not sure, but it could be one of the elements. So dwelling pluralism, genealogical connection, and sensibility. Let me try to explain a little bit more. I'll try to go a little bit farther by sharing with you a story from the field. So I was in Hawaii doing this research, and I was talking with a kumu. Kumu is the word that refers to a cultural practitioner, well-recognized source of knowledge of the community. It's a kumu. And we were talking about the heat wave, the climate crisis, and he keeps telling me, oh, everything is connected, we're interconnected with the environment. And then at one point I asked, okay, where does this connection come from? I really want to understand the ethic of ecological responsibility, but where does it come from? And that's what he answered. He said, what connects us is the air. The air, the common air that we all share, common to humans, animal, plants, rock. When we, Kanaka, honi is the Pacific, the Polynesian greeting. You probably all seen it, when nose and forehead touch each other. So when we greet each other, we share the same air that connects us with everything. We cannot keep it in. We cannot steal it away. We always needed to give it back. We cannot keep it out. It is a relationship. It is in you. You are in it. So what that means is that to be a relationship and not to be part in a relationship with the environment means to be part of the environment and not to somehow disconnect from the environment and just, looking at the environment, seeing the environment rather than observing it, because you are in it. Indigenous, at least the one that I work with, the community and groups I work with, they kept saying that they're not in relationship with the environment. They are the environment. They are the relationship. And this, I think, that bring us, because I already seen someone sleeping, probably. No, all right, no, still. But let me try to reach my final remarks and then open up maybe the floor for discussion. What are my take-home observations for you? There are two. There are plenty, but I thought let's focus on two very important ones. The first one is that indigenous knowledge could be one of the many climate adaptation tools that we could use. Indigenous community, like those in Hawaii, have developed deep place and ocean-based knowledge system that have allowed them to thrive in fragile and dynamic environment like atolls or high or low highlands in the Pacific for centuries, actually. And what is interesting to emphasize is the ability of this culture to somehow see environmental changes in a perspective that holds together the past, the present, and the future. And how do they do that? They do that thanks to the stories, the myth, the legend, call them as you like, the kumulipo, the creational chant, that can be considered collection of environmental data, hydrological data, geologic and climate synopsis. They tell you so much about the environment in the past, and they go way back. And a native Hawaiian can introduce themselves and say, hi, my name is, I don't know, Mahelani Taum, and then state his relationship with the past generation, and he can get up to 50 generations from himself. Can you go back 50 generations? That knowledge brings not just names and surnames, brings information. So I don't know how many of you knows the last name or surname of your great grandma from your mother's side. Do you know the last name of your great-grandmother from your mother's side? Raise your hand if you do. I do it because I went and looked for it, but I didn't know. So in our audience, there are 3 of them. It's something that we're not really, I'm very happy for you because you have not just your DNA or your genetic information, but you have much more. So you see the fact that through names, stories, myth, you know a lot about the past. That helps you keep together the present and the past. Keeping past, present, and future together means relating not to culture, not actually to society, but to life itself. Those 50 generations, ecological unfolding of times. And this approach allows geology and genealogy to, which you agree with me, they're 2 very different timescales, to be held together. So when you make a decision within indigenous ecology, you make a decision on a terrestrial and human time. And you're able to keeping those very different scales together and understand the decision will affect the future. And this particular ability, I should change the slide. This particular ability to cultivate a sustainable and let's call it balanced relationship with time, geological and human, allows the indigenous cultures that I've studied at least to negotiate their position with in reaction to ecological changes. They keep negotiating their place on the island. Normally, we reach or we aim for stability. Indigenous ecology reach for instability in balance. So the idea is that in nature, everything is unstable, but there's always a balance that you have to negotiate to be able to thrive. And then the other aspects of the first take-home observation is indigenous knowledge is able to keep different timescale together. And it's something that we should use also in order to make decisions for our planetary future. And the second is the importance of ethical engagement with indigenous knowledge to ensure that, first of all, these systems are respected, but also that are not appropriated with form of neocolonialism. And sadly, there are many. The change that we face as environmental anthropologists, but also as scientists, is to first of all, critically question what we know and to give proper attention to indigenous ecological knowledge. A knowledge that varies from culture, from island to island, but that has very unique, okay. Then was it a way to say that I need to wrap up?
No.
Oh, all right. And the indigenous knowledge has a lot to say about what kind of decision we can make or what kind of science we want to produce to try to not to change but to enrich the agenda, the political agenda in the way that we manage the resources. Environment anthropology could be, and this is what I'm advocating here, if not here, where, a good tool to partner with to understand that. And yeah, you see, when the source of the law is not anthropocentric, it's not Roman law, it's not common law, but the law comes from understanding and managing land, air, and water as in the indigenous community. Well, these laws are very different from environmental law that those other jurisdiction ontology can produce. Indigenous jurisdiction ontology have many laws to manage the resources. The Vai is the first code to manage water in the Pacific. And now Vai, it's a word that is used in common Hawaiian language to portray the idea of wealth. Vai, it's wealth. but Vai, it's how to manage water. It's the first code of law to manage water. So when the source of the law of the environment comes from the land, the air, and the water, you can understand that they have insight. Why not to listen to them when you do a particular research? And why not to partner with an environmental anthropologist to do it, since they already have the tools to do that? And also because we try to answer quite cool questions and very challenging one. So we try to give the answer to, like, what relationship society have with climate? What relationship society have with oxygen? How is the relationship between human and coral convey? And if you think about it, these are questions that are never asked when we talk about the climate crisis, the ocean pollution. However, in Hawaii, at least in Hawaii, but I'm learning that also in Okinawa, for example, and other islands, those questions have already been subject to a cultural elaboration. In Hawaii, the answer is, well, the relationship with the sea is a cultural relationship, which there is not an inside or an outside. There is participation, there is connection, there is collaboration, there is propagation of reciprocity, and that result in multiple responsibility toward the ocean. Multiple responsibility, kuleana, but not just human kuleana. Don't think that we are the only one to have kuleana. There is not democracy in indigenous ecology. Each element of the ecosystem has kuleana. The polyp has kuleana, the shark have kuleana, the reef have kuleana, the waves have kuleana, and so on. The ocean is the historical result of this reciprocal connection from the past till today. And Pacific Islanders know very well how the ecosystem paradigms work in science. They do understand they depend from the ocean because it's a matter of interconnection. Why? Well, because it is a relationship. It is in you and you are in it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I don't know about the timing, but I think we have 15 minutes.
Oh yeah, we have a bit of time for questions.
All right, good.
So yes, we can just start right away, and we have the seating mic, so you can just speak up.
And you can escape as your two colleagues are doing. You're more than welcome to leave. No, I'm just, yes.
Okay, yeah, Lika first.
Thank you for your talk. Actually, I grew up in New Zealand and we
Aotearoa.
have a very similar word to kuleana called kaitiaki. So it's really cool. That sounds kind of similar.
Yeah, that's why you were able to say it, to pronounce it. What is again?
Kaitiaki.
Kaitiaki.
And a person that is a guardian of the environment is called kaitiaki tanga.
Okay. Kana, it's human, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, okay. Because in Hawaiian, it's the same. The language of Aotearoa and the language of Hawaii, they have the same language group. It's called Austronesian.
It's super. But sorry, anyway, my question is, like I work a lot with local fishermen here, and I really notice this difference in the way that they approach the relationship with water and with the marine animals that live with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's extremely different to, I guess, what I've seen in New Zealand and also what you describe in Hawaii.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder, like, of course, they are indigenous fishermen, but I feel that there's a very different relationship. Have you experienced that with your work here? Like, how does Hawaii, because like geologically, they seem extremely similar, and also historically, the colonization from many parties, it seems very similar. But I'm wondering, what have you noticed that are different between your work here in Okinawa and also in Hawaii?
Thank you for your question. I think it's a really important question, a question that I ask myself too, and I found myself in your same position, saying, wait a second, there is something I need to understand more. And my answer, which I don't know if it will satisfy you, but is that it's true they have the same ecological condition historically, colonization, but the post-colonization phase are very different. So from 1970s, around 1970s in all Pacific, there was this resurgence of pride to be indigenous. Before, it was just a sign of weakness, a sign of laziness, and so on. But then, with the, like in Hawaii, only in the beginning of 1970s, the language was recognized as one of the two languages of the state of Hawaii. So children could start learning Hawaiian from like kindergarten, nursery. And if you think 1970s, it's only 5 or 10 years that we have the first scholars, the name that I put on my slides, that have reached the PhD or the postdoctoral inside the Hawaiian language. Mm-hmm. And that switch changed a lot, the way they see the word and the way they publish or give talk, and that they educate the population. So in Okinawa, that didn't happen yet, or it's not happening, or will happen. I don't know. It's up to the Okinawan, not to me, or the Okinawan too. But I heard, speaking with people, that there are some ferment. There are some people that are proud to be Uchinanchu. Others that's like they call the language a dialect, but not a language. So I think the post-colonial process, it's very different. Mm-hmm. And I see two ways. One way is that this wave of pride of indigenousness will arrive in Okinawa and will change things. Or it will not. It will be somehow suffocated by a very, the decision to rather embrace the Japanese culture, which is, there's not right or wrong, but it's just a decision that people make. So I think if you talk with the fishermen, because I work with the fishermen too, and if you dig, not in the relationship that I have with the fish, but starting from the relationship that they have with cultural site, the relationship that they have with cultural event related to the moon cycle, and then the food that they eat, the way they prepare the food at home. And then you come closer and closer to the relationship that they have with the fish, they will tell you things that are very common to Hawaiian. I have interviews now after, when I spent my JSPS postdoctoral here for 1 year, at the end, I had interviews finally that were matching with the Hawaiian one. Why am I saying finally? Because I couldn't give an answer to why everything is the same, but that reaction is so different. And actually it was because it's well hidden. Something that it's not, fisherman told me once, no, we don't have a word for kuleana in Hawaiian. We don't have a word for ecological responsibility, but just the fact that we don't have it doesn't mean that we don't perform it. We do it every day, doing blah, 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 that and that. So he gave me examples. So there is an awareness, but why should they share it with us? Do they have reasons to do it? If I were, then probably not, after what they experienced. Better to keep it safe and hidden than share it and get it lost, maybe. So this is my humble answer.
Like, do you think that it has something to do with like them not officially being recognized as indigenous?
I'm sorry?
Has it like something to do with them not, like, of course the UN.
Of course, but there is tension also between inside indigenous communities. There are probably people that don't want to be recognized indigenous and others that want to. So first of all, there is a gather and a decision, a common decision should be made. Ainu people are recognized indigenous people of Japan since 2008 because that's what they wanted to, the majority at least. I don't know about Uchinanchu. Not sure about it. Yes, there was another question, but I don't remember.
She since left, yeah.
Oh, she left. Oh, oops. Sorry, I was curious.
I have a bit more of a fundamental question.
Oh,
because I really
should
like.
I sit?
I really like the difference between to see and to observe.
Yes, let's
I
go
think
back.
it's a nice concept, and it ties really nicely differentiating between anthropological research and more, let's say, fundamental research, where to see something, we don't want to affect the outcome by interacting with it,
Right.
right? So
It needs to be repeated with the same
you
outcomes.
want repeated, you want the same result over and over, you want to measure the temperature consistently, you want to measure which species are found consistently and so on. But I think to observe is a worthwhile thing to incorporate.
Right.
My question is, when you observe incorporating these sort of anthropological experiences, are we changing the culture that you are interacting with through
Yes.
this process?
Yes.
Are we diluting their cultural experience with our novel, or let's say, superficial scientific exploration? Do
Okay.
you think we're making, is it a good positive change, or is this dilution going to lead to, their cultural practices being eroded over time if they incorporate with the sort of perspective that we have?
Thank you, Alex. Thank you for this question. It's a fundamental question, you're right. Yes, we're changing it. In fact, in environmental anthropology, we say that we are co-producing a new form of knowledge, because if I do this research, my outcome will be probably different if another environmental anthropologist will do the same research. Not saying they're wrong. I'm saying that we're going to see something different. Maybe because I'm a female, he or she is a male, or they are something else, or because of different background. I'm from Italy, maybe they're from Poland, South Mexico, or whatever. So yes, we are changing that, but it depends on the intention of it. So we could dilute it, as you said, if the intention is to produce a new pharmaceutical medicine with this knowledge, without acknowledging the fact that, first of all, it's their knowledge and we're making money out of it. This is a form of neocolonialism. Instead, if the intent, it's like, we really want to understand more about the environment that surrounds us, how it works, then those two ways of producing knowledge could merge. But yes, we are changing it, definitely. But you need to have not only the prior informed consent, but the willing to work together and to learn from one another. I'm not just learning from them, I'm teaching them as they're teaching me.
That's what I mean, but I guess my question is more changing the indigenous communities. If you give them access to, they don't just feel, see, inhabit the environment.
Yes.
But suddenly they also have access to an abundance of data.
Yes.
Let's say the cultural practices of an indigenous
Yes.
group didn't know how much the temperature has changed in their environment. They knew that it changed, but the fact that you tell them, well, actually it changed exactly this many degrees in the last 50 years, that'll change their perspective on the environment.
First of all, quantity is a cultural value. You measure something. Maybe indigenous people measure or value in a different scale or in a different way. With how many stories, how many stars there are. It depends. So first of all, you need to agree on a common language, a common measurement, measures. And then second of all, they already have access to all of that. Ask the indigenous biochemical scholars or indigenous scientists, they're geneticists. They are able, and they publish. They have a hard time publishing on Nature and Science because they talk about the spiritual aspect of science, which is something that tricky. But they do publish in peer-reviewed journal, and they're able to keep all those data and the way to be part of the environment and not being in a relationship of the environment, and they merge it together. It's challenging, it's difficult, but I'm saying that it's enriching and it's worth listening to them. So if I'm like writing a proposal for a research in your wonderful disciplines, why not to look if there is an indigenous scientist that wrote something about it? Why not to think about, well, maybe if you were interview or focus group with the indigenous community about that, about anything. Yes, but I also think, and I'll try to say it in the most positive way, that also looking always for stability and for the same result, I'm not really sure that that is the best way to proceed.
The questions? If not, maybe I can have one.
Yeah.
Is it possible to trace back where the word nature came from in the languages that have it? Like, can you
Yes.
see that it's when we started industrialization and so?
Yeah. There is actually a work done by a German anthropologist, which I don't remember now, but he did exactly that. He tried to, from Latin and when it started and how it changed actually, because we had nature. Nature is to sprout, to generate something, but then it changed as indigenous culture changed too. Everything changed in life. So yes, that's particular research has already been done for the let's say for Europe, European languages like Roman languages, and when the word nature, natur, comes from, but not for other culture. And funny enough, I find myself that in many indigenous culture, asking like my colleague, environmental anthropologist, the first question that I ask when they talk about like a tiny tribe or some research that they did all over the world, my question is there a word for nature in the native language? And most of the time, the answer is no. And if there is, they use the word of the colonizer. They did the culture that colonized. So like in Spanish, English, not in, so they used that word in the native tongue because they did not have it. So they didn't have that. And that gives the idea of the ontological way in which they think and they relate with the environment. There's no need for a word of nature. I'm nature. It's like, why do I need a word to describe myself? I am nature, which is pretty interesting as a prospect of a researcher. But I have a question for you. I'm sorry, I'm going to give you the floor. What's the word for ecological responsibility in Hawaiian? Thank you. You can use it for your password for your computer. It's really simple.
This is how OIST will be hacked.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to ask because you mentioned, I mean, you're Italian and you studied people in Asinara. Then I don't know if you're Sardinian, so I don't know if you have.
No, I'm not an inlander.
Okay, but in any case, you definitely do share some cultural background with the people in Sardinia more than you share with people in Hawaii. So I wondered how it's different to study this sort of ecological relationships in a culture from which you do share some background and one where you don't share any sort of background. And if you would advocate for sort of indigenous people studying their own relationship with ecology, or also if you think there is the need for some external people to come and study those.
Well, I'm not in the position to say what indigenous people should do and should not. So that's not my kuleana, it's not my responsibility to do that. But what I can tell you from my personal experience, that for me it was a lot more difficult to do ethnography in Asinara than it was in Hawaii. I did that during the pandemic, so when you couldn't travel, you couldn't do anything. So the closest island that had was Asinara for me. It was a challenge. It was very interesting. But I argue, and also when my student asked me where to do research, well, first of all, you have to decide, and it depends on your qualities and your capacity. But I think it's more difficult to be an indigenous anthropologist than a foreigner anthropologist, because and a foreigner anthropologist, the process that he or she or they go through is that they have to relearn the language, the culture, and the way to interact. And that is a tool to understand a new culture. Instead, indigenous anthropologists, I was an indigenous anthropologist in Sardinia, they come to a new culture that seems like their own, but it's actually not, because they've not been living there. They are expected to know most of the culture because they know the language, they share the same nationality, but they don't know, and it's more challenging because people that don't have the time to sit and teach you When you are an anthropologist, like here in Okinawa, myself, or in Hawaii, you're like a first year grade student. You have to learn. So you need someone to teach you. And that's chit-chatting or that participant observation. It's when you learn and to understand how the culture interact with the environment. Or so people take you to the boat and teach you basic thing about fishing. Like they think they don't know anything about it. And that's very important because that's you unveil the base of the culture. Instead, if you are an indigenous anthropologist, that's more difficult, more challenging. I know that other anthropologists don't share my opinion. There are indigenous anthropologists that argue that they are the only one that can do research in their own country. And I think this has to do with the trauma of colonization. But that's just my idea.
Thank you.
Good. Yes. We have one?
Well, let's do one more.
Yes.
Thank you so much. I'm curious about the participation observation, right?
Participant observation.
Yeah. I'm wondering how deep you participate.
How? What? The way?
Like you observe them
Yes.
by participate their life, their work,
Yes.
their job. How you participate and how deeply like you participate their work, their life, their everything.
Deeply enough that you become part of a family of an indigenous or an indigenous group. You become a member of a community and you participate in every moment of the community. It could be gathering, it could be fishing, it could be cleanup, it could be cooking, it could be taking the kids to school. You become part of a group. That's why you need to decide which group you want to work. I work with two particular environmental group. One was an environmental, the other one was a sovereignty group. And I spent time with them most of the time. So if you study fishermen, you stay on the boat, you go out and fish with them. But also when they come back, you clean the fish together, you eat together, you cook together. If you work with like an environmentalist group, you attend their meetings, you attend the hearing at the court. If there is something that they are interested in, you go to buy grocery with them because you never know what information will come buying grocery, for example. You clean taro, you go in the field. So you do everything physically, mentally, spiritually.
Yeah. So how long did you take between a stranger to a fully participant?
Between 4 and 6 months, I will say. That's why it's so difficult to write proposal, because a reviewer will see, okay, she wants to spend 1 year doing that research. In the first 6 months, there are no outcomes. So it's difficult to explain, but environmental anthropology, it's time consuming because you need to invest your time, your efforts to learn something new and to be accepted by a group that usually don't like you. Because would you like someone to stay in your family and be part of your family and asking tons of questions every time you do something? It's bothering.
Thank you.
Okay, then Emanuela's still here for about a month, I
Yes.
think, right? So you can always come and find her if you want to chat and have some more questions and interactions and maybe become part of her family. So let's thank her again very much.
Thank you.